Very first story, the Zion, former second occupant of the Kwame Nkrumah Chair in African Studies, Professor Emeritus Jacob Gordon, has expressed disappointment at the uncaring attitude with which African leaders address issues concerning Africans in the diaspora. In an interview with Joy News to mark AU Day today, he also urged Africans to learn more about their history.
Things happen to Africans in diaspora. You don't hear African leaders say one word about it. And Nkrumah understood that you can't just talk about Africa alone without the African diaspora. The African diaspora is an extension of Africa. If you pull these two together, hey, nobody can touch African people. Look at Brazil. It's the second largest country of black people in the world, apart from Nigeria. Brazil has more than 90-something million black people. Okay? Have been mobilized, and they have resources. Look at the African American population in the U.S. I wasn't born in the U.S., but that's where we are. Today you have more Ghanaian doctors in New York City than you have in the whole of Ghana. There has to be a reason why some of them who want to come back so bad cannot come back, or come back only to return again. There got to be a reason why people are migrating, knowing very well that we're down the sea to get to Europe. Have you had one African leader who has said anything about thousands of Africans who are dying on the sea? And when Europeans met, now they are going to apply military. The newly elected president, Prime Minister of UK, now is going to have a policy now to restrict migration. And then you're going to hear Africans complaining. He has to save the territorial integrity of UK. What are we doing at home that is making these young people want to live here to go and die on the sea? Have you had one African president say one word about it? No. 2 African American women were murdered here. Have you had one Ghanaian leader or African leader say one thing about it? It's a problem of leadership. Leadership is at the very core of our future. If you don't fix that, the future is very, very grim.
What are our young people learning?
I have a position about that. Everybody I meet, I talk to, say, I'm going to develop a program for our youth. Why? Our youth is a victim. You need a program for the adults who are raising the youth. But nobody wants to talk about the adult. Because they think that the youth are so impressionable, we can change them. No, you can't really change them. Because the reinforcement is at home, at their parents. We're wasting money. What you need to teach the youth is something about their history that they can be proud of. Everything they have to take of themselves. Once they are sure of themselves, they have confidence in themselves, you'll be surprised. Do we have to wait in Africa for Obama, President of the United States, to come and create a young leadership program for Africa? But that's what he's doing now. Bring them to the US. Let them come see. Have seminars for them. Bring them back. And they put some money now for people to be placing them in strategic places to get some experience to become leaders. Who is preparing for future leaders in Africa? We ought to have a leadership institute right here at this university. This is the flagship university of.
Now, as the whole of Africa celebrates Africa Day today, May 25, the big question is whether the organization is still relevant. Joy News' Redwan Karim Dini Osman has been sampling views on the streets of Accra.
I don't think they are really doing their work. They are not. Because we are facing a lot of problems, especially in Nigeria. Most of the African countries, we are still facing problems. So in my opinion, I think if they are really doing that job, I think most African countries will be free.
But the African Union are doing harm than good in helping the African community. because I don't see what they are doing to stop those work of Boko Haram.
Yeah, they are relevant. Without the African Union, I don't think Africa would have a voice at the UN and other global organizations. Though, the leadership is not playing the effective role to bring the citizens of the individual countries together. But somehow, somewhere, like what happened in the recent happenings in South Africa, the xenophobic attacks in South Africa, I thought the union should have come out with a resolution or a statement, strong warning to Jacob Zuma and South Africa. Because when they were fighting for their independence, countries surrounding them, countries like Ghana, Namibia, they helped the Nigeria and the, but now they are killing those Africans that. So I felt the AU didn't come out with a strong voice. But in spite of that, I still think they are relevant. They are relevant.
I think it's relevant because with the AU around, I think it will be a stronghold to help make things better, in a better Africa someday. You see, we have different kinds of human beings living down here in Africa. So I think with time, we would grow up to become united.
Well, international relations analyst Dr. Vladimir Nchidans believes the African Union is still very relevant to the African continent.
The point is, since the OAU days, there has been a contestation between continentalism and sub-regionalism. This seems to have been continentalism in the sense of getting one government for Africa, one AU and that kind of thing, and sub-regionalism where you mentioned ECOWAS, SADC and that kind of thing. So the problem seems to have been resolved one way or the other in 1991 when the Abuja Africa Economic Community project was launched. In that AEC project, the OAU decided that we must have building blocks towards African unity. That when you put on block after block, you get a very good wall. And so what they decided was that there should be 5 regional blocks: AMU, Arab Maghreb Union, ECOWAS, Economic Community of West African States, ECAS, the Central African Republic, the Central Africa as Economic Community of Central African States, then EAC, the East African Economic Community, and then you have SADC, the South African Development Community. So these 5 blocks must be viable blocks. They must be like Europe, like 5 smaller Europes. Then you put them together to get one Africa Economic Community. But since then, many more smaller mushrooming ones have come up, making the African Union look like a spaghetti bowl, as we normally call it in the literature. We have 35 of them on a continent of 54 countries. Can you imagine? Therefore, the AU decided to rationalize them, and now we have 8 of them. Even there, we have overlapping membership, and this is the problem. So the wisdom is to have these blocks viable, then we can have AU.
If we get the regional blocks viable, that will resolve the difficulties that we have regionally, and so lead to the unism we would want in AU. Is that the logic? Exactly. How do we achieve that?
We achieve that by one ECOWAS, with the ECOWAS Commission as the central organ, like the European Commission, you understand? Then SADC, so it will be easier to have 5 currencies on the continent, isn't it?
Sure.
Only 5 currencies. Then, since there are interlinkages, railways, highways, whatever, getting AU as AU is not a difficulty at all. And the analogy I gave is like putting up a wall. Once you lay the block one over the other with cement, I tell you the wall is a wall.
Well, we'll be bringing you much more on events that have been happening to commemorate the day right here in Accra subsequently. Now, teacher trainees across the country have ended the boycott of lectures pending a meeting with stakeholders. Teacher trainees called off the boycott last week they called the boycott to pressure government to restore allowances. Their spokesman, Patrick Kakarienchi, told Joy News that a series of meetings are being convened to decide on the next line of action.
First, they were not getting us, they were not getting our attention. But now that we are going to sit with the leadership in connection with the other teacher union groups that we have, that is the NAT, we are of the view that this time around they're going to see the reality and the reinstatement of these allowances. As we speak, though they cleared the allowances, but the nurses have started taking theirs. So we have a point to also share our views with them that now we are also demanding for allowances.
So now what you're saying is that it's not just going to be you dealing with the government. It's going to be yourself, that's TTAG, Ghana National Association of Teachers, and NAGRAT as well, in a more or less a stakeholder meeting. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that is what I'm trying to say. This time, this meeting is going to be in connection with the NCTE and the other unions that you mentioned, in collaboration with the TTAG.
Okay. And how soon are we to see this meeting come to fruition?
As we speak now, we are hopeful that the close of this week, we're going to have the meeting because today is a holiday. The appointment was booked to meet them so that the invitation or the set date for the work to be given. As I speak now, I will have some people who are around that week. Tomorrow by 9, they will be around the ministries to get the set date and the time and the venue.
Former rector of GIMPA, Professor Stephen Adey, has reignited the age-old debate of who should manage mission schools. He argues that churches should run their schools since government's takeover of these schools has accounted for the widespread corruption in the country. He made these remarks at a lecture on the impact of Christianity in Ghana's development at the College of Physicians and Surgeons here in Accra.
The church in Ghana has over the years played an active role in the development of the country. The Presbyterian, Anglican, Methodist and Catholic churches have established basic and second cycle schools across the country, which complement government's effort to provide education to Ghanaians. But the churches no longer have administrative authority over these schools. There has been a long-ranging debate where churches have consistently demanded the schools be returned to them, but government has hesitated, citing financial and other concerns. Professor Stephen Adey, however, says government's takeover of the schools has led to a drop in moral standards.
In our time, going to a Presbyterian school means you are disciplined, honest, hardworking. And these were not negotiable. At this moment, the schools, all of them, even when they say it's a Presbyterian school, the head teacher has nothing Christian in him, Latin. So this type of moral education has been lost. And that is what over years we are reaping. People, I teach in the university, and thank God a place like Ashasi University is an exception. But in most universities, the ordinary student doesn't have no qualms about teaching to get a grade and pass. And just because the foundations at the primary and middle school, the junior secondary school, which were solidly Christian, has generally been eroded by the government taking over and almost excluding the churches from the day-to-day management.
Professor Adey also dismissed suggestions the clergy must be exempt from politics. He described as devilish arguments that the clergy's job is only to preach the gospel and not to dabble in politics.
It comes from the devil for somebody to say that go and just tell people to be born again. But don't tell us when we are stealing that we shouldn't steal. When we are money which are meant for the people should not be stacked overseas and other things. It is only the devil speaking through them. Always the church has a prophetic voice. The church itself must tell its members to excuse certain practices and must hold those who govern us accountable for good governance and morality. And nobody should allow any politician to say, separate the church from governance. The church members, where do they live? Do they live in heaven? They live on earth. They contribute their taxes. And if they are 70% of the population, they are contributing about the same. So I don't think that is right. And I personally, as a Christian, will challenge every politician who says that he has no business to lead our country.
Professor Adey also charged Christians not to be afraid to vie for political office or vote for other Christians who come up for elections. This, he argues, will help redirect the nation onto a godly path.
A flag-raising ceremony has been held here in Accra to commemorate the Africa Union Day. My colleague Na Dede Tete witnessed the ceremony at the forecourt of the State House and now joins me in studio with much more on what has been happening there this morning. So Na Dede, good morning. Okay, it's afternoon now already. So you were there. What happened?
Okay, so essentially it was a flag-raising ceremony. Okay. It's the 52nd anniversary of the African Union, 52 years since it was set up. So the Dean of the Diplomatic Corps, she started by, first of all, paying homage to the founding fathers, and Kwame Nkrumah was one of them. And then she went on to say that, indeed, we have made certain strides, but we need to work more. She also went on to highlight some of the challenges on the continent that we need to work on. Things like diseases, things like hunger, conflict, which she says is having a negative effect on the development of Africa. She also went on to say that Africa is looking at and becoming self-reliant in some few years to come. So the leaders have decided that within the next 5 years, they are looking at funding their budget, their program budgets by 100%. They are looking at peacekeeping as well by funding that by some 25%, well, among other things. Just take a listen to her.
Pursuant to our quest as Africans to remain fully in control of our destiny, the African leadership has come up with innovative policies to end donor dependency, as most of our programs are funded by donors. African leaders therefore decided that within 5 years, the Union should be able to fund 100% of its operational budget, 75% of its program budget, and 25% for its peacekeeping operations. Fellow Africans, we should not forget our brothers and sisters in Western Sahara who are still fighting for their dignity and self-determination. Theirs is the last outpost of colonialism, which we may have to dismantle in fulfillment of the vision of our founding fathers to fight to a fully independent and sovereign Africa. As we celebrate this day, let us reaffirm the African Union principles of unity, solidarity, bequeathed to us by our founding fathers. As Africans, we must continue to build on those principles that unite us for the benefit of the present and future generations.
Well, indeed, that was something that just happened this morning at the forecourt of the State House there. I still have with me Na Dede Tete, who was there. So, what else happened? What else did they talk about?
You know, the theme for this year's celebration is empowering women for development towards Agenda 2063. And Agenda 2063, they've outlined a number of things. I could take some of them.
Sure.
One of them is a prosperous Africa based on inclusive growth and sustainable development. They are looking at an integrated continent, politically united, and based on the ideal of Pan-Africanism and Africa's renaissance. They're also looking at a peaceful and secure Africa. And then an Africa where development is people-driven, unleashing the potential of women and young people driven, as well as Africa as a strong, united, and influential global player and partner. They say that women have played a crucial role in Africa's development over the years. So they must be given the opportunity to contribute more, rather than what we are seeing that they feel that, well, we haven't made so much gains with. They did mention that, well, for example, Madam Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, she's a living example that if women are given the opportunity, they can actually make a difference.
Thank you very much, Na Dede Tete. That was my colleague Na Dede Tete, who just returned to the studios. We're taking a break here, right here on Joy News Today. We'll be back shortly with some more. Stay with us. A political science lecturer at the University of Ghana, Dr. Evans Sagridako, has rubbished calls for the chairman of the opposition New Patriotic Party and the General Secretary to be suspended. The calls come on the heels of the death of the party's Upper East Regional Chairman, who some believe was murdered. There have been calls that Paula Foko and Kobne Japan step aside until the police is through with investigations into the incident. But Dr. Agudako says the party leadership should rather focus on ridding the party of factionalism, suspicion, and mistrust.
I don't see how a change of leadership, for instance, at this crucial moment can help the cause of the party. What they can do is the unity of purpose. The leaders themselves must be committed to the unity of the party, bring all the factions together. Sometimes you see even football coaches, they may not like a particular player, but he is the finisher, a cracker finisher. So what do? You use him, you understand, to achieve your results. And then, you understand? So personal issues and all of things must be relegated to the background. And you see, when you go into some of these parochial interests, it doesn't present you as a group of people who are interested in governance. I'm not going to entrust my destiny into the hands of a group of people who themselves cannot even put their house in order. It is critical that they shape their own destinies, and the leadership must be interested. And for all the rank and file, the former president, the flag bearers, and all those who matter must present themselves as and behave as independent empires. You understand? Independent and impartial empires. And then you can then wield that moral authority to call people to order. But as I said, I'll go back to my earlier point that there's too much suspicion and mistrust within the party, and that is what is creating the problem.
Well, regional chairman of the opposition NPP are meeting party executives to deliberate on a proposal to impeach national chairman and the general secretary. The two have come under attack following the murder of the northern regional chairman of the party, who died after assailants poured acid on him. Let's touch base with our reporters on this beat. Joining me over the telephone lines now is Edwin Kofi Siang from the Eastern region with much more on this. So, Edwin, what more can you tell us on this? What's the latest on this particular one?
Well, the meeting in the Eastern region just started, and the regional executives are here, most of them, and some of the constituency executives as well as some members of parliament. And I can also see some elders of the party also representing in the meeting. Even though they did not allow the media to be part of the meeting, information I'm picking from some of the executives, they actually spoke to me in confidence, is that they're going to consider the issue of whether Paul Afoko and Kwabena Japan should remain as chairman and general secretary, respectively, of the NPP. And what they are telling me, again, is that they're going to consider the issue of Paul Afoko being a donor, because they fear that when he's booted out, their political opponent will capitalize on that. And the effect will be that they're going to lose votes in the northern region. So the meeting is underway. No media man is allowed in, and we're waiting for the outcome of the meeting, because they've assured us that they're going to brief us on what will transpire in the meeting.
All right, Edwin Kofi Siang, thank you very much for that update. That was our correspondent in the Eastern region, Kofi Siang, bringing us up to speed on the particular meeting to consider proposals to impeach party chairman Paul Afoko and General Secretary Kwabena Ejapon. Now, military personnel are to be deployed to the Barekese and Owebi dams area to check encroachment. Illegal land-based miners, farmers, and land developers are said to be causing extensive damage to the buffer zones of the two dams which supply water to Kumasi and surrounding communities. Water Resources Minister Dr. Kwekwajiman Mensah, who told the facility, says he has already made a request to the Regional Security Council about the situation. On him Interior's report.
The Barekese and Uwabi dams together supply 43 million gallons of water daily for residents of Kumasi and surrounding areas, with a capacity for future expansion. Illegal chainsaw and mining operations at Nkwankwa near Ofenso, as well as farming and land development activities in the buffer zones, are however threatening operations. Officials of the Ghana Water Company say the activities are causing siltation and structural defects which threaten the lifespan of the dams. Water Resources, Works and Housing Minister Dr. Kwekwajiman Mensah wants the military to be quickly deployed to the area to avert any danger.
Well, let's go back to the New Patriotic Party, and former Greater Accra Regional Communications Director of the party, Mike Ampon, says that recent happenings in the party have made it unattractive for voters. He's not surprised with calls for the impeachment of the chairman and general secretary.
Bothered about it, of course. I mean, when there is problem at the head, okay, I'm bothered about it. And of course, if it is not resolved and it enters into the election, it may go against us. Okay, so I'm very much bothered, because it is not only our party members that can bring us into government. You need to be attractive and appealing to, of course, if there's infighting, killings and all those things, accusations left and right. What shows that you are ready for this thing? But I'm saying that whereas there is commitment, when there is commitment, it's a leadership crisis that we are facing. Okay, the other
parties facing a leadership crisis.
I mean, you hear people saying the chairman should resign, the Union Secretary should resign, and also saying the flag bearer should resign.
Do you agree with such claims that the chairman should probably step aside, not necessarily resign?
No. For me, I think that, you see, the thing, what has happened is a crime. Let us allow the state security agencies do their professional work. At times I get embittered by the way Mr. Polafoko and Mr. Kwabena Japon had handled certain issues in the party. Okay, for example, look at the way they wanted to do away with the security. Okay, I wasn't happy. The approach was bad. I mean, it was very, very bad. That's what I'm saying. Because at the end of the day, these are people who are party members.
Time now for some business right after this. The Asogli thermal plant at Kpung, near Tema, has been shut down due to the unavailability of gas. The situation has resulted in the loss of about 180 megawatts of electricity. Now, reports suggest the plant produced about 90 megawatts on Saturday due to low gas pressure, but was completely shut down on Sunday due to the absence of gas supply from Nigeria through the West African gas pipeline. Gas from Nigeria, which powers the Tema enclave, has been cut off following the shortage of the commodity in Nigeria as a result of the ongoing strike by workers in the petroleum sector. Well, my colleague George Afe of our business desk here has been explaining the possible implications.
The Asogli power plant was producing or feeding about 180 megawatts to the national feed or the national grid. So obviously there's going to be a shortfall. Now, the assurance that we are getting from speaking to those engineers on the ground is that the other power plants are using crude. So therefore, we wouldn't see any immediate impact for now. But if the situation should drag or should go on for a long time, then we could be seeing some real implications in terms of the continuous supply of power to you, your homes, as well as businesses. So for now, that is what we can tell for now. If the situation in Nigeria does not improve, it means that going forward in the coming days, we'll be seeing the real impact of the shutdown on other businesses and consumers.
Over the past week or so, personally, and asking a few other people, there seems to be some sort of an improvement in the generation of power, at least in the distribution of power to various households. Is that the case? And what could account for this if indeed it is the case?
Normally, now let me explain something to you.
Okay.
You know that from weekends, if you are home, you get power consistently because some of the industries, some of them didn't go to work. Yeah. So they moved that power demand to the consumers.
Okay.
Even today being holiday, a lot of homes are having power because those industries are not working. But again, if you look at over the period, there are more of the plants are now running full capacity. Initially, they were doing half because the technical issues and all those things was a factor. Now, most of them are now working on full capacity, and that is why they are able to meet the demand. What I again been speaking to the engineers is that, well, enough crude is available to supply the plant, but they don't know how long the stocks are available to power these plants in the coming weeks. So for the homes that have been receiving power, it's because during the weekends, we have some of the industries going down or shutting down. And that is why they feed that supply to local, that is domestic consumers for them to use. So Asogli going down, it will have the impact. But if the situation in Nigeria persists, then you're going to see the real impact of this on you and I and those of us who depend on the generators or the power generation to feed our industries and feed our businesses and supply our homes.
Ghanaian peasant farmers have held a protest to demand government halt the full rollout of genetically modified foods. According to the farmers, there are indications that African governments are working with US-based company Monsanto to introduce GMOs onto the African markets. The Peasant Farmers Association of Ghana, together with allied groups, staged a demonstration at Esuchari in the Eastern region. Joy News' Redwan Karim Deni Osman has more.
However, ever since plans were announced to introduce genetically modified organisms into the country, the issue has been met with a number of public outpouring. At Esuchare, a farming community in the eastern region, farmer-based groups and other civil society organizations have converged to protest, or better still, reaffirm their position on the issue. So I ask, is this just to add to the number, or indeed this would be able to galvanize government into action?
Monsanto is trying to impose GMO seeds on smallholder farmers. And farmers are causing suicide. They are committing suicide in India to the extent that Prince Charles said that he needs to set up a fund that will cater for farmers who are causing suicide in India. And they are now trying to use our government to impose the same seeds on our smallholder farmers in Ghana. So we are thinking that it's about time, we in Africa and in Ghana, to stand up and fight against this kind of new colonialism.
Do you think government will listen to you this time around?
Well, the most important thing is that we are raising consciousness and public awareness about the impact of GMOs onto the Ghanaian economy, onto the Ghanaian people, and onto the farming practices of our people. Farmers are the first persons who will suffer most, and that is why we have come to the farming community to engage and sensitize them about GMOs.
Okay, and what have been the responses? Do they really understand the concept of GMOs?
Well, I think it's not too difficult to understand that GMO is a seed that is not owned by the people of Ghana. It's owned by a foreign interest, and it's going to make sure that year in, year out, these are the kinds of seed that we put in our soil. And this is going to have an effect on the economy of farmers and also have a great impact on the national economy. We cannot afford to have this.
But what would be the worst case scenario if government goes ahead to implement this GMO policy?
Well, if government goes ahead to do it, they will do it against the interest of their own citizenry, because government needs to be sensitive to the interest of the people. Majority of the population are small farmers who are dependent on their small seed that they can afford. And if government decides that their concerns are not important, then I think it will have a lot of reflection when it comes to people deciding who should lead this country.
But many a time, people have argued that this whole initiative would take people out of poverty. This whole issue will make life better for the ordinary farmer in this country.
But that is the other side of the story they give. Because while they say, some scientists say to take farmers out of poverty, there are a lot of scientists that also say it will do the opposite. It will make farmers poorer, because the seed, the GMO seed they're saying, will not necessarily perform better than traditional seed. And secondly, it's going to end up with farmers even using herbicides. And herbicides will go to kill all plants except the GMO. And we are concerned about our biodiversity. The farmers are not only growing food, they are also growing medicinal plants. They are growing plants for different purposes. And if you use these herbicides, you kill everything.
All right. And so that was the executive director for the Center for Indigenous Knowledge and Organizational Development. They are hoping that governments will give them that listening ear. And at the end of the day, the decision to implement the GMO would be cancelled. Reporting for Joy News, Redwan Karim Dini Osman, Esuchare in the Eastern Region.
Before we go, a recap of our top stories. Pan-Africanist laments poor historical knowledge among Africans, making them ignorant of the power they wield as the continent marks Africa Union Day. New Patriotic Party holds regional executives meeting to deliberate on proposal to impeach party chairman Paul Afoko. Well, we also brought you a lot more in business and sports, as well as the very latest on the happenings at the West Hills Mall. That'll be it for Joy News today. My name is Kwabena Chencheni Boating. For more news, do well to log on to myjoyonline.com. Have a happy holiday.